Well, it's an utter pleasure to be here with you tonight. My background before I joined the RSA 18 months ago is in local government, and not in London either. I did nearly 20 years, although it pains me to say it, working in Norfolk, doing community engagement, community development, partnership working, a little bit of everything, all the way through to strategic stuff. So now I'm at the RSA and I'm doing work in the Public Services and Communities team. And I'm just going to run through some thinking that we're doing at the moment about how change happens. In 9 minutes, this will be very sort of just a few pointers and thoughts to leave with you, but always happy to continue the conversation. And I've got some copies of a short publication that I published at the back end of last year, which goes into some of this in a bit more detail. Many of you will know the RSA, I'm sure. It's been around a long time, 200 and whatever that is, 64 years-ish. Always looking at trying to come up with solutions for social challenges, how we go from great ideas into impact. And we're developing this emerging thinking, which we call think like a system, act like an entrepreneur. It sounds a bit clunky, and it sort of is, but what it basically means is this is our way of trying to understand the world, think like a system, be systemic in our understanding, and then act entrepreneurially in response to the opportunities for change that we see emerge. And the reason for this is because our account of why policy can often fail is because you do a great, perfect diagnosis of a problem, you come up with the perfect plan to address it, you get it signed off, you start implementing it. By the time you implement it, the world's moved on and left you behind. So this path dependency is a real challenge for how we can be responsive in reacting to circumstances and to opportunities. So we call it think like a system, act like an entrepreneur. We try and understand the complexity within which we're working, whilst at the same time looking for opportunities for change. And central to this idea of opportunities for change is energy. So where is the energy in our communities? Where's the energy for change on particular topics, particular issues? And we really look at individuals as being the catalysts for energy, and I'm going to give you some examples about that. But we think about individuals, we think about communities, and we think about energy in the system. And I'm not going to go through all of the content is for you to digest at your leisure, but individuals are driven by incentives to act. We're all motivated by different things and different incentives. We're also motivated by social norms and social values, shared values and norms. This is why if you go on holiday to a culturally different country, it's really difficult to figure out what's okay and what's not okay. In our own context, we understand. And then you've got the power of the hierarchy and people who have got resources at their disposal, people who are overseeing strategy, people who have authority. And this idea builds on work that Mary Douglas has done or did over many years, that in any context for trying to tackle any particular challenge or issue, you're always trying to look at bringing together the individual perspective, the community perspective, and then the hierarchical perspective. So how does this apply to climate change? I'm going to give you a really simple example and just build it up. So this is me as an individual living in Norfolk, driving everywhere because that's what you do, obviously in a rural place, with my groups, with my clubs, with my associations, with my work. And those aggregate up into a complex system around the place in which I live. Now I drive a diesel car, I drove it around Norfolk, I'll openly admit it, without even considering what that might be doing to air quality. Then I moved to London 18 months ago when I joined the RSA, and all of a sudden the social norms probably haven't changed, but they're more salient, they're more pertinent to me. I feel it as I walk past the school, I feel it as I run, and I can feel the air quality. Suddenly it's a real challenge and it's an issue. Nothing has changed in my mind other than my context. So how can we leverage the power of those small moments to try and create change? And I'm going to talk you through, very briefly, some oversights around network thinking, which will give some ideas as to how those ideas and those notions spread between individuals and between communities. So the power of social networks. You might have come across the work of Robert Putnam, who looked at the impact of being connected to others. It's kind of what a network is. So here you can see somebody in the center of a network. They're well connected to not only probably about a dozen people in that network, but they're probably connected to maybe 20% of the people in that network. So they're really well connected. Then you've got somebody over here who's actually quite vulnerable. They're only connected by one person into this wider network. And you've got people who are outliers who aren't connected at all. So there's this idea that for any particular topic or challenge, these are the people that are going to spread ideas and information much more easily than people who are on the edge of the network. So how do you identify them? And how do you help pull people into a network? Because as Robert Putnam pointed out, in terms of the things that are going to make your life happier, and marriage and affluence, wealth are key predictions of happiness. He says that just joining a club and getting involved will have as big an impact as an increase in salary, for example. And we'll see why that is. This idea of 3 degrees of separation, so the Stanley Milgram experiment where he proved that everybody's connected to everybody by 6 degrees of separation or whatever it is. But what it does is it shows that ideas and behaviours and fads spread through networks up to 3 degrees of separation. So if you have 11 friends and family who you're relatively close with, who you interact with on a regular basis, and they have 11, and they have 11, you go out to 3 degrees, that's over 1,300 people in your network. And the science proves that all of those 1,300 people, what they do impacts you, but you won't know most of them. So whether somebody starts or stops smoking, starts or stops recycling, maybe they buy an iPhone or they go to an unusual holiday destination, all of these things will impact on you because they ripple through your network. I went and started a master's. I met people who flew in from all around the world to do this master's. Suddenly I thought, wow, there's possibility that had never occurred to me before. And that's how things will ripple through networks. And the evidence says that, for example, for each unhappy friend decreases the likelihood of your happiness by 7%. So, who you know is kind of important. So how do we use those insights to be able to mobilize, to be able to share and spread the ideas that we want to? Well, there's some ideas here about the key criteria. So we've looked at the networks. I just wanted to focus on what is termed boundary spanners. I don't particularly like the term, but it's this idea that if you've got different networks, and you can think about this in terms of the sort of, the diversity of opinions that have been really topical in recent times. If you've got quite a coherent network here and a coherent network here, boundary spanners are the people who link. Really important to be able to link those networks together. These people are already talking to each other. How you spread those messages is really important. And this idea about the messenger effect, that there are 3 things that are really important, not just expert opinion leaders, but we like people like us. Super, super important. And that's why quite often when you get celebrity endorsements of particular campaigns, that doesn't work because they're not like us. But also, people have to be trustworthy. So even if somebody is telling the truth, if we don't trust them, we won't believe them. So very briefly, just this idea that trying to spread ideas, concepts across networks over time is kind of like an up and down thing. So we have to go with the flow, we have to go with the energy, but be mindful of the power of trigger events, things that raise an issue into the public consciousness, that make it easier to get messages across. And things like, the recent dialogue around plastic bags is an obvious one, but increasingly it's the social norms around buying a coffee in a disposable cup, for example, are becoming really pertinent. So I leave this with a series of questions. Back to the stuff that we saw, cultural theory from Mary Douglas. Let's think about where are the incentives for individuals to act? How can we shift social norms and shared values within our own networks, within our own localities? And where's the leadership strategy and expertise around the topics that we're interested in? And can we combine all 3 of those? Because our thinking and our insights is that if we can do so, we'll have greatest impact that we can have, but beware fatalism. There will always be people who just step back and say, this isn't for me, I don't get it, I'm not doing it. So, and that's kind of okay. So we go with the energy and we work with the willing.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.